Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, May 5th, and today we're going to continue learning about the solar system. Today, the focus will be on the outer planets, those that you may be slightly less familiar with, but I'm going to start by doing a very quick review of those inner planets, and only because there's at least one major thing that I forgot to mention yesterday. And the one major thing is, as we looked at how the solar system formed and then those four inner planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, the one major thing that I failed to mention yesterday, which many of you already know, is that these four planets are rocky. They're rocky and they're small compared to other planets in the solar system. So I need to be very clear the main differences between those inner planets and the outer planets. And that is going to be a huge distinction between the inner planets and the outer planets. The inner planets from yesterday, small and rocky, made of rock. Um, and that's going to lead us to the outer planets, which you have probably heard the term gas giant before. So let's get right to it, to those outer planets. Now, we are going to talk about Pluto in this section again, keeping in mind it's not a planet anymore, but it is there. So, moving our way away from the sun, so we had Mercury, then Venus, then Earth, then Mars. Then we have the asteroid belt, which we're going to talk about tomorrow. And then beyond the asteroid belt, the next planet that we come up to, the fifth planet from the sun, is Jupiter. And Jupiter is famous for lots of reasons. Yes, it is a gas giant, but it is also the largest planet that we have in the solar system. Um, we've had a couple of space probes that have traveled out towards Jupiter. You can see Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, Cassini, and perhaps some others since your book has been published that have gone out into the solar system and made some laps around Jupiter, taking pictures, taking measurements, those kinds of things. The one thing that is most often associated with Jupiter, besides its size, is the Great Red Spot. And in fact, what you will find is there are actually several of these Great Red Spots, but this is the largest. And the interesting thing is that you could place 3 Earths in that one Great Red Spot. That's how big it is. 3 Earths fit into that Great Red Spot. Now, what is it? Basically, it's just a huge storm on Jupiter. Winds in the 200 to 300 mile per hour range in that storm. And, it's a Jupiter itself is you couldn't land on it, but even if you could, it would not be very hospitable. All right, lots of storms, an atmosphere made of gases that we can't breathe, carbon dioxide, but a lot of hydrogen, helium, um, stuff that just would not be very conducive for us to be there. So human travel to Jupiter, not really anything that we're going to be able to do. However, Jupiter, it says in the book, at least 61 moons. That number is actually quite a bit higher. All right, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Jupiter has got 4 large moons, which Galileo could actually see back in the day with his simple telescopes. Um, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto are these 4 large moons around Jupiter. And these are much more likely a place for humans to explore. One, because they're rocky, they're not those gas giants. There's actually a solid surface to land on, but also just some of the really neat features that we think are on these moons. For instance, Io is the most volcanically active object in the solar system. It is constantly erupting. It has a thin oxygen, sulfur, and sulfur dioxide atmosphere, which is also very encouraging. Um, Looking at Europa, it has a rocky interior. It's got a thick crust of ice that has a network of cracks in it. And scientists think there could actually be an ocean of liquid water underneath that crust. Also, notice thin oxygen atmosphere, starting to get towards things that may be more conducive for humans to check out. Ganymede also has got a hugely thick crust of ice. Also, may have an ocean of water or slushy ice underneath that solid, icy exterior. Thin oxygen atmosphere again. So, very neat stuff when we think about things that humans find important. Callisto, very similar, crust of ice and rock. It might surround a salty ocean. Check that out. There could be some neat stuff swimming around down there underneath that ice. So those large moons are the most intriguing for humans. Here you can see a picture of an eruption that was caught on video here on, and I think that's Io. All right. I'm almost positive it's Io. So kind of a neat picture there. Moving outward, the next planet that we have is Saturn. Saturn, again, very large gas giant. So when we say gas giant, we mean that what we can see to be the surface there is still gas. Underneath that, moving inward towards the center, there may be a section of liquid. This would not be liquid water. It might be liquid hydrogen or helium, or in some cases methane, as we talk about Neptune and Uranus. And inside that, it's thought that there's a solid rocky core. All right. So Saturn, again, a large gas giant, but Saturn obviously is most known for its ring system. Basically, that ring system. Here's an interesting fact. Did you know that the Earth had rings for a while? Until our moon actually became large enough to clear out its entire orbit of all the small dusty particles in there, and it all finally joined together as one. The Earth had rings too, and that's what's happening with Saturn. These are just small particles, and you look at this picture here, pieces of rock and ice. Eventually, all of them, because of gravity, are going to bump into each other, get bigger, pull more stuff in. Eventually, these rings will no longer be there, and that will actually form even more moons. Saturn has a ton of moons. The numbers in your book here, it says at least 31, just like Jupiter. Those numbers are way off. The reason? Our technology has gotten a lot better in the last 15 years, and we've got a lot more people looking for these moons. Obviously, the bigger a moon is, the easier it is to find. And so all the large moons have been found, but now we're able to find some of the even smaller moons with the technology and the telescopes that we have. So we've got Jupiter, giant, the Great Red Spot, largest planet in the solar system. We have Saturn with a lot of moons and rings around it. And that takes us to Uranus. You can see the pronunciation Uranus. Frankly, just like Sean Spencer on the TV show Psych, I've heard it both ways. All right, I prefer to pronounce it Uranus. That way, I don't sound too uppity like Uranus. Right. So I will call it Uranus. As you can see, Uranus is huge. It is gassy. It is, because it's blue, that tells us that it's made of methane. So it's also would be very stinky, like rotten eggs. So all kinds of interesting characteristics of Uranus. It does have a very thin ring system as well, and has lots of moons around it, but that's not what makes Uranus special. So not only is Uranus large, gassy, and stinky, but it's also rotating sideways. Whereas most planets rotate in some fashion vertically, Uranus is actually rotating on an axis that's tilted almost 90 degrees. So it's rotating basically on its side, which is actually pretty kind of cool. All right. Uranus does have many moons as well, just like all the large gas giants do. The next planet is Neptune. And Neptune, bluish in color, tells you again that it has methane in it and has lots of moons. You can see some cloud features here on Neptune. So, very interesting planet as well. Its maiden moon Triton has a thin atmosphere and maybe is composed mostly of nitrogen, so unlike some other atmosphere you've ever heard of, like Earth's 78% nitrogen, right? Um, so Neptune has been discovered, or it's been explored by several space probes like Voyager 1, Voyager 2 have cruised out there. Actually, maybe just Voyager 2, but we have sent space probes out there to check it out as well. Those are the 8 planets. In 2006, when your book was published, there was a 9th planet called Pluto. It still exists, it's just considered a dwarf planet, which we will talk more about tomorrow. Pluto, extremely small. It doesn't fit the pattern. We got the small rocky bodies close to the sun, and then we've got the gas giants further away from there, and then way out in the solar system, we have this little tiny rock called Pluto. And one of the reasons why Pluto is no longer considered a planet is because of its moon, Charon. Its moon, Charon, is almost half the size of the planet itself. And so it's thought that these two bodies actually orbit around each other instead of the planet and the moon orbiting around it. So if you're interested, I'll maybe attach a Google page that explains that why Pluto is no longer a planet, and you'll see that it has not yet cleared out its orbit. One other interesting fact, Pluto is sometimes not the farthest planet away from the sun. Neptune and Pluto, their orbits, in some places in their orbit, Neptune is actually further away from the sun than Pluto is, which is kind of neat. So, I want you to check out this table. It is the bare bones basic stuff that you need to know about the planets. All right. Almost all of the stuff that I talked about is in these tables, and it gives you all of those pages from the textbook broken down into the most basic, important information that you need to know about the planets. All right. So, with that, that is going to end our lesson for the day, talking about the outer planets. So, in the last 2 days, we talked about how the solar system formed, we talked about the inner planets, and now we've talked about the outer planets. There will be a short quiz that goes along with this video lesson with the major concepts that I talked about in the lesson. So, please take care of that quiz. Remember, that's how we give you your grade every week. Is your completion of those, and preferably completing them fairly well. One neat hint is to open the quiz first and read the questions before you watch my lesson. Then you'll know what to listen for in the lesson. If you have any troubles, any issues, any questions, email me, bswitz@nfdlschools.org. You can message me, or you can request a Google meeting, and I'd be happy to help you. So, with that, good luck on the quiz, and I will see you tomorrow where we will talk about asteroids and comets. See you then.